Good morning.
Good morning.
And then she was
Good morning. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Good morning.
Let's see. Who's on? Christy. So we're waiting on Drew, Alicia. That's it. I wonder if they're coming. Casey.
Casey said she was coming. She texted on and said she was coming.
I can text Drew.
I hit Casey.
Here's Casey.
Hey, Sharita. Hey, everyone.
So then we're only waiting on Alicia and Drew.
Is Drew on the committee?
Yeah, according to the roster that I got from Ruby, yes.
Texted Drew.
While we're waiting,
being haunted.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Sharita, that was something from my phone.
Okay. Colin sent the minutes right just before.
They were way late. Sorry.
Just before, so while we're waiting on the last two people, can you guys review those minutes so we can be ready?
Drew said he's trying to.
Drew's here. Hey, Drew.
Hey, Drew, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Getting into HSAC Zoom meetings is like getting into Fort Knox, but I finally made it.
All right. Looks like we can. Do we have enough members on the call to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11
I think you have enough.
to vote our minutes and stuff? We have enough?
Looks like it.
All right. So I guess I'll officially call the meeting to order. It's 10:38 a.m. I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes that were presented by Colin if all have had the opportunity to review. I know that our new members were not on the last call, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Or corrections.
I think Helen Tripp is one down. I'm not sure, just the spelling of her name, but I move that we accept the minutes.
Seconded.
Who was the second?
Casey.
All right, so moved by Colleen, seconded by Casey. All those in favor, put a yes in the chat.
And I will make the correction to Helen's name.
Okay, with the correction to Helen's name, and the motion carries. Next on our agenda is welcoming of our new members. We've allotted 5 minutes because if either Christy or Casey want to introduce themselves, tell us something interesting about them or why policy and planning, you have the floor to do that at this time.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Christy Page. I'm the Director of Client Services at Housing for New Hope. And we definitely, I wanted Housing for New Hope and any kind of community meeting that we can, and policy and planning for me, because I've been around the block and got frustrated enough with no progress on the family level, on the individual level, and know that some things need to get addressed at the policy and planning level. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thanks all.
Good morning, everyone. I am going to remain off camera during this meeting because I'm multitasking this morning. But I'm Casey. I respond to they, them pronouns, and I'm the Director of Housing and Therapy Services and the co-director of Project FAM at the LGBTQ Center of Durham. We have been, for the last couple of years, to slow boil to a closer relationship with the COC and CDC and the homeless system in Durham, and very excited to be joining this committee and being involved in multiple different ways with the COC. And, you know, policy and planning, I think for us as the LGBTQ Center of Durham, we're very excited to offer our voice to the growth of the COC towards being more responsive and affirming for our LGBTQ folks and community. So very grateful to be here and happy to see everyone this morning.
Thank you very much. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I look forward to what you guys will add to this group in the coming year. Yeah. I look forward to it. Welcome aboard. The next item on our agenda is the Office of Secretary. So normally on this kind of transition month when the new people come in, we open the floor because we do need a secretary, and that person would be responsible for keeping the minutes and getting those to the chair prior to the meeting to get dispersed to the committee for review so that we're ready at our next meeting to move forward and approve our minutes. Who was the last? Oh, Russ was the last secretary, so he's no longer here to be able to share any experiences he's had or what worked. I'm sorry about that. But do we have templates or anything like that, Colin, that we've been using for minutes?
I just jotted, I took the minutes from the last meeting and probably should be fired from being a minute taker, but we could probably go back and pull what Russ was using. He's the only secretary we've had.
I have all of Russ's minutes archived.
Great. So with that being said, we need urgently to fill this spot for our 2021-22 term. So I am opening the floor for volunteers for Secretary for Policy and Planning. I see smiles and names.
Listen, y'all, I would happily volunteer if no one else wants to do it. However, I have been the secretary for every committee I've ever been on, and I'm ready for a different challenge.
Well noted. Thank you very much, Casey. Nobody? So in this instance, Colin, what do we do? Do we wait till next month when our 4 people that are missing are back? What do we do?
Well, I started taking minutes. I do have to leave early, so I won't be able to finish minutes. Somebody's going to have to pick up in about 10 minutes when I have to jump over to a HUD meeting. So if somebody can at least finish off this meeting, then we can sort of have a conversation with the folks who are not at this meeting and see if any of them are able to or interested in doing it. Otherwise, I think it could go back to KC, even though it's not their preference.
Oh no, Casey, oh no, I did not do that. That was Colin.
Or it could go to Drew. Drew was the first person to put his finger on his nose.
I would be more than happy to finish minutes today and volunteer to take minutes next time. I would love it if someone else could do it, but if no one else steps up, I will do it.
Colin, I think you have set a good precedent for extremely concise minutes, which especially given that recordings also exist of the meeting, right? And interested citizens can listen to that too. You know, I think the concise minutes create for a lighter task than perhaps they used to, you know, when they go on and on and on.
Yeah, and for anyone who's thinking about maybe being a secretary, that's a good reminder that for these meetings, we only require action minutes, which is who's present and any votes taken by the committee. So we're not talking about writing out word for word what people are saying.
That's good.
Well,
In
if
that
it's
case, I'll volunteer to be secretary.
oh, okay, that's what I was gonna say. Well, heck, if that's all it is, I could do that, but all that other.
Casey, are you volunteering or do I need to work diligently to try to get someone else? Do you want me to try?
I'll volunteer. Let's just make it simple.
Thank you very much, Casey.
And Casey,
What?
I can email you the few notes that I took myself.
Perfect.
You can just sort of cut and paste them in or massage them into your language and
Perfect.
style, the formatting.
Okay. So Hanalei, are you prepared to present today?
I am not, because I didn't ever receive confirmation that I was on the agenda, but I do think it would be really helpful if the committee could have a conversation about whether they want to continue to receive these and when, because it's been a little bit confusing for me about when I'm actually supposed to be bringing you these presentations. And if you still
And
want
tell me again what the update was.
Yeah, so a couple years ago, this committee voted that they wanted to receive system performance updates twice a year. And that was when I was still staffing the committee. And since I've no longer been staffing, I've still been operating under the understanding that y'all still wanted me to bring these system performance updates twice a year. But like I said, it's been a little bit confusing when I'm supposed to be bringing these and if y'all still want them. And since the agendas have, no shade to anyone, but since the agendas haven't been going out ahead of time, it's been hard for me to know when and if I'm supposed to prepare that presentation for y'all. So it would be really helpful if I could get clarity on, one, do y'all still want these twice a year? And two, if we could just decide what months those are going to come in. And I would recommend, that it would be after the beginning of the federal fiscal year, and then at the midpoint, which is what we were doing before. But whatever it is, I think it would just be really helpful if I could get some clarity on what y'all want.
Okay. So in my personal opinion, I think we do need to get the system performance updates. I agree with you. We probably should check, pick the months that we will do that. And then that way, when we are doing our visionary planning, we can just go ahead and already place those things in their spots. So we won't forget that they're coming up. Anybody else have any thoughts around that? I just added that in. I'm sorry. Holly, you want to tell them what things you would be reporting on in the systems performance update?
Yeah, so and we could also go back to the drawing board. I mean, I know we have new members, so always open to feedback. We've been kind of doing it the same way for a while now, but so it's a pared down version of what we have to report to HUD annually for our system performance. And basically we looked at all of the metrics that we're reporting to HUD on. And so this doesn't differentiate like this project, that project. This is our system as a whole, how we're performing. And the committee had picked out some metrics that they wanted to receive biannually. On a basic level, it's two different types of ways that we measure length of time homeless. It's exits to permanent housing, it's first time homelessness entries, and returns to homelessness. Those are the metrics I've been asked to report on. Again, I'd be happy to rediscuss what metrics y'all want me to report or any other feedback y'all want to provide, but we've just sort of been doing it that way for a while.
You said length of time, first time homeless, return to homeless, and exits to permanent housing, right?
Yep, that's right. Kind of I think of those as kind of like the basics of how we think about how we're doing as a homeless system.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I was sort of wondering, I think there is still a performance management committee. And I was kind of wondering, just based on the names, it would seem like they would be a better fit to be receiving and at least taking a first pass at that data. So, I mean, if there is something to be done about the data, i.e. if it suggests that somebody's really underperforming or that there's some issue that needs action, that might be something that the two committees would talk about together. But I'm sort of, I don't know, this is my first meeting with this group and I don't want to rock the boat too much, but also just kind of conscious of one of the things that makes committee work difficult is if we're receiving lots of reports that we're not doing anything about, or that actually are primarily somebody else's responsibility, or maybe should be.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think
Sorry, Sharita.
I think the reason why this came up is because from a policy standpoint, we want to know if there's something policy related that we need to be doing differently that impacts performance. So I think that's why it came up. I think if I'm not mistaken, Honolulu, did it come up last year when we were doing families, which is one of the topics we're going to discuss today, especially in light of white flag? Is that when it came up, or?
No, this is something that y'all have been receiving reports on since basically the beginning of this committee. And I think I want, maybe it'd be helpful for those new members to clarify the scope of the committee and where this fits in. So yes, the word performance is in performance management. The task of performance management, as I think you alluded to, Drew, is to address project performance, which means whether individual projects are complying with the standards of the COC and how they are performing on our performance standards. This committee is tasked with looking at policy to improve our overall system performance. So there is a separate, much more detailed report that I provide actually quarterly to performance management that tries to dig in more to how individual projects and project types are performing. It's a much more detailed report. And I think it's a worthwhile conversation, Drew, as to whether this is what the committee needs in order to evaluate our policies, because that is the goal. But when the committee originally decided they wanted this report, it was in service of serving that goal of how are we doing as a system, and what policies do we need to think about to improve that performance, whether or not this is the right report or the right version of that for y'all to receive. To make those decisions is really for y'all to decide.
Any other feedback? Doesn't sound like it. Hanalea, would you be prepared to give us that update next month?
I would be happy to, yes.
Does anybody think that we shouldn't get this update? Do you understand why it's important for us to get it?
I think it'd be good to keep track of, to Hanalea's question, is it causing us to make policy changes or to propose policy things? And if it just isn't the thing that's really feeding, policy changes or policy change discussions, then, maybe we need that, or I don't know, but just something to kind of track as we receive the updates and think about what they're telling us.
And to that end, Drew, I think something for y'all to think about as we try to really build this in more into the calendar is to make sure that y'all have enough time in the agenda to really reflect on, and because it's going to take to some kind of spitballing, right? Because this is big ideas, right? To drill those down into policy decisions. And so making sure that if you are going to build this into a biannual report that's actually like on the agenda twice a year on a certain month, making sure you have enough space in that agenda for everyone to kind of reflect and discuss would probably be helpful for driving policy.
Okay, so Hanalea, would you be ready for December?
Yes, I will be ready for December. And do we want to decide what months these are going to be on now, or do y'all want to let me know later? I will do it in December this time, but I was hoping to get some clarity on what months. Do y'all normally want it to be November and then whatever the 6 months out from November is, which I think is March? Should I, expect those, and are y'all going to put them on the agenda, or do y'all want to decide later?
In light of new members coming on, I think it's good to have one soon after they come on, just so they can see where we are when they first come. Whether November is the best month or December is the best month is my question. Might be a bit much for a first meeting. If the new officer, new folks are coming in October, my vote would probably be for December's meeting. And then the other meeting can be, closer to the other dates before we're doing reporting the HUD.
Sure, I can put, that would be December and June then, if that's what y'all want to go.
Anybody else have any month suggestions?
It may be worth looking at, because we turn in our official system analysis for the year that ends September 30th, 2021. That'll be in by March or April. Does that sound right, Lloyd? Is when that all gets finalized? February, somewhere in that time frame. So it may be worth doing the interim report.
It's in that time frame. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I don't have that precise schedule in front of me right now, but yeah, it's in that first quarter of the new calendar year that system performance measures go in.
So it may be worth having the next one right after that final report for the previous year, the official report goes in, because to get the official report that goes to HUD, there's a ton of work, a ton of data cleanup, a ton of work that NCCH helps us to do to get this cleaned up. So it may help to have that plus our interim be able to do side by side of kind of where were we and where are we now? Are we on track? Are we ahead? Are we behind? So we have an idea of where are we on that curve.
That was how the original schedule was developed. Because, and just to clarify for the committee, because I'm not sure everyone's aware of it, that annual report that's being submitted in April, that's not like immediately from April, right? That's the year before. So that was why this committee wanted not the official reports, but like an unofficial version. That was the original schedule that was developed, but we've gotten off of it because these keep getting bumped. So that's sort of one option, but it would push it earlier. So if you want to be on a timeline based on new members, then that would push you off. But it's important that your interim is 6 months out from your annual, because otherwise you're not really getting enough new data for it to be informative.
Any other suggestions? Do we need to vote on timeline? So are we gonna stick with December and June? I think that was the recommendation that was the suggestion that was on the floor between when Holly and I were speaking about it. I guess we will leave it there. Tentatively December, we'll get our first report, and then June we'll get a follow-up report. Thanks. The next item on our agenda is the white flag policy for families. So it recently came to my attention that we are at capacity for our family spaces. Remember, we were here last year and we had to create a special subcommittee to address it because the numbers were fairly huge and COVID was big, really big then. I am not sure, and I don't know, Hanalei, if you can pull the data right now about how many families we have that are in need of shelter that we don't have any options for. But I got a call on Friday night about a lady with 3 kids outside sleeping in a stuffed car on Fayetteville Road. Somebody was trying to figure out what options there were for them. And it was whatever that first night that it was gonna freeze. When was that? Thursday night or Friday night? When the temperature was gonna drop. They were out on the street. And I did not, the only thing I could do was encourage the lady to call coordinated entry. I think I called Miss Carolyn and she tried to see if Beckett could go out there, but Beckett was off duty. We were just trying to get somebody at least connected to this person. And the person actually was not even a Durham County resident per se at that point. They had come from Virginia. I have not been able to get back in touch with them after that one conversation because believe it or not, it was like 2-3-way calls to get me connected to the lady to start asking questions. So it then was brought to my attention that we had other families in the same boat that were already, our folks. And I don't know. I feel like we should have some kind of policy that we just don't have families with children on the street. I mean, I would like for us to have that policy for any homeless person, but with children, we just don't want babies on the street. And I wanted to talk about, we are supposed to be in fall, but it seems like winter took over. I want to talk about our white flag policy and what we need to do as a community to address this problem that looks like we're already looking at again. I don't know. Hanalea, can you find any data right now?
I can pull the data for y'all, but it's just going to take me a couple minutes.
Okay. So the floor is open to discuss this. I think that I think the open table has some white flag funding, and I want to say Families Moving Forward, if I'm not mistaken, has some some overflow funding. I don't know if it's necessarily designated for white flag, but in either case, we are not up and running with either of those projects. And I know that they were funded through some ESG COVID dollars. So Colin and I have been talking. I think he's going to be meeting with those potential white flag options providers on Wednesday. So I wanted us to have a discussion to give some feedback for Colin to take to that meeting on Wednesday. As it relates to what we will do, the first thing I asked that mother when I spoke to her is where her kids registered for Durham Public Schools, because the only thing that I know that we have a quick turnaround with is that Ebony sometimes has that funding to house those school-age children in very short-term housing over at the that hotel on 55, but she had not registered her children yet, so it was not even an option. And I wanted to get her connected to Ebony on last, so it must have been the Friday before, on last week, and the young lady didn't call me back for me to even try to begin the process of getting the kids connected, so maybe she could help them. But here we are again, folks, in a situation where we have children on the street, families on the street. It's getting cold, and I would like to see us already have these plans drafted out where we can activate them when we need to. But we don't, and I think that's on a planning spectrum. I would hope to see us get there, so that we're not having to try to recreate the wheel or create a wheel because it's here. So at this time, I will entertain any conversations anybody wants to have about this. The floor is open. And Hanalea, let me know when you're ready with your data.
So Sharita, when is White Flag officially starting? Is it this year or is it next year?
So the concept, the white flag definition is when the temperature drops below freezing. That's a white flag.
Was White Flag Friday morning?
Which was Thursday night, which is probably
right. Yeah.
The night that the young lady was outside.
So how do you go about if you know that it's going to be below a certain temperature, whatever the temperature that they have, to be considered white flag? Is there action being taken for the people that are out in the street? Because there was a lot of people out in the street this weekend and it was cold.
Well, cold and below freezing are two different things. I agree with you 100%, but cold and below freezing are two different things.
Sad.
This is Colleen. Who initiates white flag for our community? Who determines
the temperature going below? So if the weather report says that there is a day that the temperature goes below freezing, normally that's a white flag night. I haven't ever seen a formal communication go out and say this is a white flag night. Usually the weather report is consulted. And sometimes we know that, well, in a week's forecast, we'll know that in advance. Sometimes we won't. I mean, I think if it's 40 degrees and it's raining cats and dogs, it's too cold to be outside, because wet and cold is totally different from just cold. So I don't, we need to look at this as a system. What do we want to do? I think right now we have COVID funds, but if we don't get COVID funds next year, we won't even have those funds at our disposal to even do anything probably like what we've been able to do in this last year. Is that correct, Honolulu and Lloyd? I just really think that we need to have a plan. We need to have a plan. I don't know if we said, I don't know how we can set it. I don't know what HUD or ESG definitions say. I don't know, but we just need to have a plan. I mean, we have families on the street. I know we have singles on the street because the shelter's been full it's been full the whole time. I don't think we've ever really been down. So, I mean, we just need to have a solution. Hanalea has some data for us. So, Hanalea, you want to share that? We can't hear you, Hanalea.
You can't hear me?
Okay, I can now.
So I looked it up, and currently there are 23 families who are reporting that they are unsheltered. I want to be clear, they are reporting that they're unsheltered. These are not necessarily all families that we've gone out and confirmed physically. But of those 23, 19 are Durham residents. 19 families, not 19 people. I can also pull the singles data if you want it, but I thought you just wanted the families data.
Anybody want to just know what the singles data is, what it looks like right now?
I do.
Can you tell us, Hanalea?
Yeah, give me 1 second. So there are currently switches. All right. So there are currently well, it's a little more complicated for singles because there's these people who don't want to go into shelter, so they get put in a separate category. But there are 108 singles currently that are unsheltered who want shelter. And then there are probably additional ones. Give me 1 second. That don't want shelter, but it's a little harder for me to distinguish whether or not they're unsheltered or just at risk. So I need to pull a separate report to do that. But they're essentially, I can tell you there are at least 108 singles right now. Is that what I said? Yeah, 108 that are unsheltered and want shelter. And of those, let's see, of those 96, so the vast majority are residents. And if y'all want me to pull the singles numbers of singles who don't want shelter, I can do that too.
Can you pull that
Yeah.
while we talk about
Absolutely.
these numbers?
I just gotta grab it.
Okay. Those are our numbers, people.
I have a question for the group. So I think most of us participated in the HSAC meeting, the last HSAC meeting where Open Table Ministry was talking about their response to white flag, and that they have overflow specifically for families and for those with limited mobility who can't get to their congregate shelter. So the question is do you not think that that is sufficient to serve the families that we have? Or are you thinking that we should kind of like reserve the families so they don't get they don't go there and say, oh, there's no more rooms now? Or I guess what issue are you really seeing?
So the conversation that I had, and I think Colin's going to have this follow-up conversation with Miss Carolyn, is that they were preparing to activate those things January 1.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the issue is we are a long way from January 1, which is why Colin is having the meeting with them on Wednesday to say, hey, this is where we are. And I don't know, did Colin have these numbers today before he got off? So he doesn't even know where our numbers are sitting right now. But I mean, 108, I don't think Open Table has capacity for 108 singles. You know,
This is the first time I've been asked for these numbers, but I wanted maybe to explain to the question about ESG for those who may not be familiar with what we did with White Flag before COVID, and just kind of like some background. So before COVID, Urban Ministries operated White Flag kind of at their discretion, right? So we don't have, some communities have like a right to shelter at 32 or below. Where I worked in DC, we had that. It was a city council decision. It was a citywide vote, and there was a city investment for that. And so it was a city decision, and they set it at 32. Here, there's no policy, so it was an agency by agency decision. So before COVID and the social distancing requirements of COVID, Urban Ministries would kind of make a White Flag decision. Usually it was 32 below, sometimes inclement weather, other things like you mentioned. And then the rescue mission kind of did their own thing as well. Because of the social distancing requirements of COVID, Urban Ministries was no longer able to do that. And that's where Open Table stepped in. So we would have some White Flag capacity. I also wanted to share, just to add to this conversation about the confusion on the client side about when we have White Flag. I actually just yesterday interacted with a gentleman who was panhandling to go to White Flag. And I explained to him it's not going below 32 and White Flag doesn't exist yet. It's not up and running. And he was very confused because he was like, well, it's going to be cold. And I was like, well, it's not 32. So I think regardless of what we do, we really need to be thoughtful about how we communicate this. And I think part of that stems from this challenge of not having like a policy, right? Because, it does get a little bit muddled. But I'm concerned that people on the street aren't really clear about what's going on.
And so you said a whole bunch of stuff right there, and I wrote down 32 below, a city investment in places for the right to shelter. Do we need a policy? Do we need to be asking for a policy? And if that happens, then logistically, what does that look like and what does that mean? Because if the city or the county invested in this, I imagine that would be huge, and there would be some big old space for folks to sleep in. And I know that Wake County, ironically, I had the conversation with Colin about the lady on the street, and then I turned on the news, and Wake County was already kind of playing for their space because their old space was not available. And I was like, oh my gosh, Wake County is like, already on this mark where we're sitting here like scrambling, well, not even scrambling, because we're just having this conversation today. So, yeah, like what do we need to be doing? I see Drew's hand up, and I don't know if it's still up. It's up for now, from later, and I see Lloyd's hand.
It's up for now. I think that, kind of a policy about when people would be guaranteed White Flag or when White Flag would be available would have to go along with investment and facility decisions that, really only the city and or county would be in a position to make, I think. And we've learned more about, I think, kind of what that kind of commitment from the city specifically, would look like during COVID, because we haven't been able to do what we have traditionally done. But, my thought is HSAC has been asked, or Colin, I guess he's off, right, will be asked for some prioritized, some priorities for policies and or investment, relating to the ARPA funding. And I think there's an opportunity there for the HSAC. I know this is certainly not the only kind of homeless infrastructure related need that we have, but we will have to, I think, is part of our work to figure out where we put kind of White Flag facilities and investments and the associated policies kind of in that lineup. But basically, to have a policy about White Flag sort of availability or rights and whatever without sort of the associated facility discussion would be, to my mind, kind of nonsensical. That wouldn't make any sense. And so I think, and the way to run this up the flagpole at this point would be to kind of integrate it into our feedback to the city and the county about ARPA funding, and help them kind of make decisions about outfitting different kinds of spaces so that they're prepared to receive folks in the colder months of the year.
Okay, thank you, Drew. I got a lot of hands. I think Lloyd was next.
Thank you, Sharita. I would simply add that even last winter, which was also during the pandemic, I'm not sure we really had white flag for individuals or families. Open Table Ministry was operating some supplemental congregate shelter of about 20 beds at Trinity Methodist Church between early January and at the end of March. And some people were, when everybody could not be accommodated at Trinity Methodist, some people were sent to the Carolina Deep Inn, CDI, for some additional space there. I'm not aware, and I'm certainly willing to be corrected as to how many families may have been sheltered during the winter beyond the households that were sheltered at Families Moving Forward and Urban Ministries during those months. I don't believe there were many families that were sheltered. Not, at least I'm not aware of it. So I would be willing to very much stand corrected as to what the numbers were last winter.
So I'm gonna add a little bit of content, Lloyd, to that, the points that you made.
Okay.
At one point, we had like 28 families, and we did activate an emergency plan and got some funding that we did last year. Hanalea could probably
Right.
give us some more information about the data, because we were monitoring, trying to get those numbers down, because I think at one point we had as many as 28 families on the street. So
Right.
there was a huge response. There was a working group that was created with Ebony Thomas with Durham Public Schools, kind of facilitating and leading that way. There were solicitations to local churches. We got funding. We did some stuff with our coordinated entry folks and trying to get some funds over there as well for them to be able to work with families who did not have school age children. What I will add about the open table capacities, that they had 20 beds, but in several conversations that I had with Ms. Carolyn during that time, they were beyond capacity. They did
Right.
utilize the beds that they had at CDI. There was also this agreement that Durham Rescue Mission was going to take some folks when they were at capacity, and Durham Rescue Mission did not do what they said they were going to do for the people that they sent over there. So that is what I do know about last year.
Well, I appreciate that update on that. I was not party to those discussions, but sounds like probably we're going to need some kind of similar effort to that, particularly for homeless families in this upcoming winter season.
So I see Angel's hand, but I want to give Hanalea an opportunity to add about last year's response. So if you don't mind, Angel, let me get Hanalea's additional content, and then I'll come back to you. Okay. All right. Go ahead, Hanalea.
Yeah, and actually my hand was up to get y'all the additional data that y'all asked me for. I pulled the data a different way, and in total, regardless of desire for shelter, it looks like right now we are aware of 125 unsheltered singles in the system. So that includes those who are and are not interested in shelter. As far as what we did last year, I mean, it would take me a while to pull the data on exactly how many people were served, but I would love to bump this actually to Christy, because you were closely involved with the effort. I mean, basically the way we did it last year, there was white flag at CDI in addition to the winter shelter that was being operated by Carolyn. That was specifically for people who were either medically vulnerable, had mobility challenges, or were families, so they were unable to go to the shelter at Open Table. But it was because of complications with efforts for outreach. It was focused on those who Street Outreach already had efforts with, and I'm not sure how many families were actually served through that. Do you know, Christy? I could look it up, but it would take me a while. Oh, Christy, you're muted.
Yeah, I'll pull that up while we address Angel's question, if that's all right.
No worries, I just thought you might know.
Say it again.
Yeah. I think Christy said she'd pull it up.
Yes.
But that's what I know. That's what I have at this time is 125 unsheltered singles. That we
So
are
that's
aware
like-
of. I
that's
believe
so
there
it's
are
like-
additional. But
So it's like 17 people that are unsheltered but don't want to come to the shelter.
approximately.
Does that mean they want CDI when you say they don't want to come to the shelter?
No, these are people who don't want
Shelter
either-
at all. They
either don't want
housing.
or are unable to, right? So they could be a sex offender, they could be under a long-term suspension, or they could just be uninterested. So there could be a variety of reasons why they're not, but for some reason or another, they're not putting themselves on the shelter list.
Christy, are you letting me go to Angel now and then you're gonna respond, or you wanted to respond now? Because Angel
No.
had her hand up and I want to get back to her. I don't want to miss her question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
No,
Go ahead,
Christy,
Angel.
go ahead. I could wait because we probably have kind of like the same information almost because I was with y'all at Housing for New Hope before Open Table Ministries had taken over and did their white flag. So from helping you all out there, I think that's right around Thanksgiving because I remember I was out there and how you all had did the white flag is that they meet there at 6 and when you get the rooms until they run out, right? That's how we did it. But then at Open Table, when Open Table Ministries took over, it was not for families. I think if I recall one family, a lady with her kids, because she didn't really want to put the families in there with the adults, so right where you come in down the steps, it was a family that was housed there, a young lady with 3 young kids, and the rest of them, the males, everyone else was out in the church part. I mean on the floor part downstairs. But when I forgot what her capacity was, but it always ended up going over a little bit because it was freezing out there and it was cold. So that's from when she had it from January to March. So it was supposed to have been what she said that they would go to CDI. Families that came there to Open Table Ministries were supposed to go to CDI. And forgot the young lady's name from up DS, who was the driver who was supposed to take the families that came there to CDI. Destiny, that was her name, because I know I was constantly calling Miss Lavette Williams and sending people there over the weekend so they can get registered for entry point, so they could get try to get permanent housing from being there. But it was rough. It was really rough, and it was cold, and it was a lot of people still that they had to be turned away because it wasn't any more room in the inn. So, it's serious out there, y'all. It's real serious.
So, I mean, we're already, Honey, I did not expect those numbers to be at 108 for singles. I don't know what I am.
It's
And
upsetting.
street outreach right now can't take on any new clients. So that is just really like blowing my mind. And we are not at even the remotely close to it being winter and like 32 degrees a lot. This is very concerning to me. And we don't have even a right to shelter policy here, and we don't have anywhere for people to go. We did. But that's a problem. And I don't know if that is a future goal that we need to be trying to push our community to go to. I mean, I can just think in the last week in my clinic, I think I've seen probably 10 last week, about 10 or more people that were new to Durham County. I'm not going to tell you where they were living, but they're new to Durham County. Now it's 10 that I saw. That's 10 singles. So if it doesn't work out where they are, there's going to be 10 more added to this 108 list. We have a really big problem. And our current things that we have in the works, they're going to be taxed. And I got hands up. I think I see Lavette. Levette's new. Hanalea, were you gonna add something to the discussion that was just added, or can I go to Levette first? And then Angel.
Yeah, I was just gonna clarify a couple of things about the numbers. One, I just wanted to make it clear that that 125 number, that's who we know about. That's who we're in touch with. My instinct is that probably our real unsheltered singles numbers is probably closer to 140, 140, 150 of the number of people that are out there, but we're not currently in touch with. And then the other thing I wanted to add, just for context in terms of capacity, as we talk about returning to old white flag, is that even when we did have the UMD white flag, it didn't meet anywhere near the full capacity. My memory is that it was, I think, 8 women beds and 10 men beds, around there. It might not be exactly that, but so you can see that that's not a full meeting of this capacity at all.
And then it was COVID too. So that added to that.
Miss Levette.
Hey, I think, and you may have said this, Sharita, did we say that the winter shelter we had last year, they were gonna open in January? I'm just wondering, is there maybe consideration can be made to open that sooner? Maybe, and I mean, I know we're up on the time constraints, we're already in November, but could we look into maybe possibly opening that sooner? And then I'm wondering if, and I know it's funding tied to it, but is there funding to have more rooms at the hotel over at Carolina Duke Inn for families that we might can open up for white flag?
Okay, so that is why Colin is having the meeting with them on Wednesday, because like I said, Miss Carolyn thought that she couldn't go active on hers until January, but Colin said that the ESG COVID funds will allow her to do that. But we also have to remember it's white flag, so it's still going to be based on 32 degrees or below, correct, Hanalea?
So the plan for Open Table, the plan for Open Table, like last year, is to do, it's like a winter shelter, so it'll be open for the season. And then last year what we did was the additional beds at CDI. Those were the ones that were based on temperature. This year though, we've had some conversations, and I think there will be some further discussion about keeping those open for a longer period, because it created a whole lot of extra work to put those clients in and out of CDI. And we ended up with money left over anyway. So that's the conversation right now, is something longer term, but Carolyn will do consistent with what she did last year.
So do you know what the capacity is? Is it 20 for Carolyn?
I believe it was, I'm sorry, I'm gonna jump in here. I think that it was 20 last year, based on, how the social distancing and everything. I know that there were some nights when she was up to 40. But
CDI, what's the CDI capacity?
Well, the CDI was really contingent on funding. At least it was last year. We reserved, X amount of rooms. And, I think Angel can probably remember as well, but the demand was typically higher than the number of rooms. I think the first couple nights that we did white flag at CDI, it took some time to get the word out, but it didn't take long until the demand was higher. Until the need was higher than the amount. A lot of people kind of doubled up in rooms. Just to give you, I also wanted to give you an update. I'm sorry, I finally found the white flag stats. They're a little bit segmented. So last year, again, the seasonal shelter at Trinity Street, it didn't open until January 1st. So Housing for New Hope came and did the CDI rooms from December 1st to January 1st. And that we did, that time period, we did, oh my goodness, I just lost it. We did 6 families in December.
At CDI?
At CDI. We did 75 singles, rooms for singles, or I'm sorry, households for singles, and 6 for families. And then in January to March 31st, we served 16 families at CDI. So that was in addition to some rooms that Ebony coordinated with her families.
Okay. But you don't, so when you gave me the 6 families in December, was that just the CDI space? It wasn't open table space. You didn't give me open table data. You gave me houses for New Hope data.
Correct, because Open
Okay.
Table didn't open until January 1st. So
Gotcha.
CDI was the only white flag option at that time. And we were operating as white flag, being that, you know, we didn't activate it till it came 32 degrees. We're 37 degrees low.
I have a message from Casey in the chat. Can folks here confirm in chat if you are a guest at the meeting or a voting member? Okay, yeah, we need to get you a roster. Casey,
Ruby's gonna do that, Sharita. Thank you, though.
okay, great.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So Open Table Ministries is taking over again for White Flag starting January. So is this going to be ran the same way, or are there any differences since COVID isn't as involved as it was last year, because there was a lot of social distancing in there, as far as putting the mats down for everyone. And there was a lot of people that had to. I think the highest number that was in there was, Christy, was 26, maybe 28. At
Gotcha.
yeah, at there. It wouldn't have housed that many people. But remember at CDI, I think if they open it up for CDI for White Flag, I really think it should be stricter things, because a lot of people were just coming in who actually weren't homeless, just, you know, booty call. They're like, I told them, y'all are trifling to want to bring somebody here, you know, and then roll off in the middle. And, you know, because those rooms could have been used for people. And Christy, you know, it was putting people in rooms together. And then, you know, some of them who had a double room, they got, you know, like they didn't even want to share the room with someone else. But like I told them, y'all share the streets together. You should be able to share a room together, share a floor. So it's a lot of times we was putting 2 with 3 in the room. So people were like, look, I'll sleep on the floor. Just give me a blanket. You know, and that was before Open Tables Ministries. But when Open Table Ministries opened up, it was already a lot of little chaos between that, because it was said, well, this is not going to go down like it was at CDI. But nevertheless, people were not able to get in there, you know, on other people's opinions. So a lot of people had been turned away from there. So I was at CDI with Housing for New Hope, as well as Open Table Ministry. So yeah, I saw a lot firsthand on both places. But it is a need. I don't see why we have to wait till January.
So we don't have to wait to January, which is why Colin is having a meeting with all partners who have White Flag capacity. So I know that includes Families Moving Forward as well, because they have some funds allotted for overflow, or I think if should somebody have a positive test and need to go somewhere else or something like that, in their plan, their most recent ESG COVID funding. So
what
he's
about
having that
Durham?
meeting. So
I'm sorry.
so I brought this up because I wanted to bring it to our group's attention. We need to think about this from a planning position, from a policy position, but also from a position of giving feedback to Colin to share with the group in his meeting on Wednesday. So I think what I hear is that we're asking for our providers to open up sooner.
What about the rescue mission? Because it's a lot of nights they didn't even let any, you know, they were not no help at all. So that was a lot of times when she did overbook a couple people because they, they weren't helping at all.
So we can't control what Durham Rescue Mission does. They are not part of our continuum of care. They are a private entity. So they can say something and they can not honor it. I mean, it hurts us when those types of situations happen. So we're just really limited, and we're probably at their mercy when it comes to situations like this. If they do take someone, yeah, I mean, for the most part, our team is who we have. Our team is who we have and who's been doing this, and that's unfortunate. And that's something where maybe we try to help impact what's happening in our community and help set some policies and some standards and just some practices and kind of create a working flow of what we do when we get here and having that stuff mapped out, so we just know that we need to activate it when it becomes a problem. Those are the things that this committee is tasked with doing, helping us create that kind of flow of what we have in our community. Lord, I see your hand. Angel, your hand.
No, my hand's not
Are
up.
you done?
I don't know how to take it down.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure I'm gonna leave you out. I have on here opening sooner as a request. I need y'all to be thinking about any other requests we want to make to that group. I want some feedback. I want to know what our true capacity is between the two programs, in light of looking at the numbers that we have. And I think Lloyd's hand is up. So Lloyd, you're going to add to this discussion?
Yes, thanks. I think Drew's comments in the chat are appropriate. I mean, we need to develop policy and have a community-wide approach. Winter is going to come around this winter, and more than likely it'll freeze again in next winter. So it would be good to develop some long-range plans that we can begin to implement. And, where the funds are going to come from. I think another important person in the conversation would be Ebony Ross Thomas at Durham Public Schools, insofar as I believe she has been using some, as you suggested, I think earlier, should we use some funds to put households with children who are enrolled in Durham Public Schools in hotels during the winter time, assuming that she's going to be able to continue to do that for at least limited periods of time. I know I had discussion earlier this morning with Colin around discussions he's had with, I think, the state of North Carolina and the use of FEMA funds to reimburse the local governments in Durham about putting people up at CBI, and FEMA, I think, is not going to be reimbursing our local governments for all of the costs that are being incurred at Carolina Deep End to put people up, because people are staying for 6 and 9 months at a time, and that is not the intention of what non-congregate shelter was intended to be when this pandemic started. So we've got some challenges, and but I would second Drew's idea of getting some language drafted as to and see what community-wide approaches can be developed. I think in the short term for this upcoming winter, it's probably going to be things cobbled together as it was last winter.
I agree 100%. I definitely think we need to we need to push our city to have some kind of policy and some kind of space for such things as this. I don't know how we fund it. I don't know what we look at, how we develop it, but I think that we are past the point of not having something like this in place, especially as we become more and more attractive to people because of the resources we have in Durham.
Right.
You got to remember that is a contributing factor in all of this is resources. We have a lot of rural areas around us. We are the closest, one of the closest big cities beyond, Raleigh. And folks are gonna flock they're gonna flock here where the resources are, because where they are, they can't get to the resources. So they'd rather come here, stay at the rescue mission, get into the shelter. At least they can get on a bus and they can go to DSS, they can get to a hospital. We look really attractive. So we're sitting ducks. So we gotta have a response, because we got 108 singles out there, and these 23 families, we don't know how many people that represents. The lady that I know about had 3 kids. That's 4 people. So if every family right here had 4 people in it, that's over 100 folks too.
So Sharita, like at CDI, Reinvestment Partners had got a whole section of it. The left side, Christy, he really pretty much has all of those. So it's not a lot of rooms like it was last year at CDI. Does anyone know how many different organizations there are housing different, how many different organizations are housing them? Because I know Urban Ministries, they have a group, and I know Peter has his group that he remodeled those places and have people in those houses. So does anyone know how many different organizations are at CDI housing the individuals?
I do. So Reinvestment Partners is managing the whole deal. They don't have separate clients there, but Urban Ministries and Project Access of Durham County are the sort of case management entities, and Alliance also has an additional 8 or 12 rooms. So Alliance, but that's not through the county contract. That's their own separate deal with Peter. But Reinvestment Partners is just kind of they're definitely more than a property manager, but they don't have their own clients. They're kind of organizing that.
They're just housing for the organizations.
Yeah, they're sort of in the middle. They're sort of responsible for procuring, I think it's a total of 76 rooms, perhaps.
Yeah.
That are being directly case managed by these 3 other organizations: Urban Ministries, Project Access, and Alliance.
Okay. So who has the ones when you first come in? That's just CDI, the ones that haven't been remodeled. When you first come in to the right.
I think those are Urban Ministries rooms.
Oh.
Along that big long wall on the right as you come in the driveway.
Yes, the one, yeah.
I think the back side of that building are sort of other rooms.
Right there, Drew. When you first come right there to the right, you go all the way, all those older rooms, they're real old right over there. Where the rental office is, not to the left. Everything to the left is pretty much new and everything, but everything to the right, who has those?
That's a mix of Urban Ministries and then just, rooms that the Carolina Duke Inn continues to lease out to, long-term clients or nightly clients. And I think that's what we've used for kind of white flag overflow and for some COVID positive overflow when the duplexes are full. We've put some people out there periodically as well.
Well, last white flag, it was on both sides. We was on both sides, right, Christy? Because we was on the odd and even numbers, even over there about where the pool, we was over there.
Yeah.
So I did want to point out that you might find a little striking is that I believe, Project Access, UMD, Reinvestment Partners, everything was the same as far as systematically with the homeless service system using CDI rooms. But for white flag, and again, I'm just looking at the month of December, because when the shelter opened up in January, the room numbers at CDI significantly decreased. But it looks like the height of rooms was 32 rooms. And like Angel was saying, we doubled up. So the highest number of clients that we were able to serve was 43.
White flag clients.
The individuals that were experiencing homelessness.
You
So,
just mean white flag clients specifically?
correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
So
that
that's
was in
on top
addition
of the
to
other
correct.
76 rooms or whatever.
Right. So, Sharita, I know, or somebody's question was how many rooms could we get? I think that the funding only allowed for 25, but, since not every night was considered white flag, we were able to increase it when, at times when needed. And so, yeah, that's what it is. So I think that although we didn't serve a lot of families, using this, I do think that this effort combined with, like I said, Ebony coordinated some hotel rooms with the McKinney-Vento. So I think that served a good number of families, at least probably as much that are on the shelter wait list right now. So I would agree with what y'all said earlier, as long as we can, for this year, get the same kind of efforts to serve the need. And then like Drew was saying, we'll concentrate our efforts on getting like a facility or something that could be longer term to put into play, like Sharita was saying. So when we need to activate it, we can just activate it community wide, and these resources will already be available.
And that's where we need to go. I think we do a good job with our in the moment planning, but I would really like to see us have some of this stuff already built out, so we just know when it's time to activate that thing. I think that, like Hanalea just gave us those numbers today. We need to figure out, we need to come up with some kind of way, some kind of alert system that when we get to a certain number of singles and a certain number of families, that the continuum is notified and we need to move to the next step. Because I don't know if I hadn't had the family that I had the other day and start calling around, if we would even be having the discussion that we're having today, to find out that it's that many families and to find out it's that many singles without a plan. And right now, street outreach is at capacity. So they're not even getting a telephone call or a familiar face that they can go to for stuff, because they can't do anything right now. Street outreach can't do anything right now. So, we don't even have the little familiar face person for them to even cling to. So it's not good and very frustrating. I think whatever policy that we come up with, this can also be used as part of our emergency response when we have adverse weather, things like that. Because like in years recently past, we didn't have plans for those, and we had been confronted with adverse weather situations, and it just looked up that maybe the state did something. I think the last time the state opened up Sears, and that was our saving grace, because we didn't have a plan otherwise if that hadn't happened. So there are some things that we definitely need to project out and plan for, and know, have signals that activate that level, and where the communication goes out and everybody knows what's happening now, that we need to try to build out as part of our planning structure.
Just one, detail that's occurred to me over many iterations of this conversation is that I think it's difficult to you wouldn't build a permanent facility just to use as a white flag shelter in the winter months.
No.
Right? We build permanent, homeless infrastructure. We will try to find permanent, year-round uses for it. I think that makes sense. So to me, we're kind of, the facility investments are a little more kind of fine-tuned. I've often thought of facilities like the Armory downtown, right, which does get rented out from time to time, but I would say the vast majority of the time is sitting there vacant and is an incredible resource. So acknowledging, right, so we might have kind of a list of places where we could open up and operate a white flag shelter if they were available, right? And that's the kind of facility that in my mind would be on that list. Might take some additional, investments here or there to kind of make that a good place to kind of put people in white flag is great. Sharita, I see your comment. I agree, right? But no matter how many shelter beds we build, they will always be full when white flag rolls around, and we will always have unsheltered people who will need to go somewhere. At least that's my feeling. That, that will always
Right,
be.
but when I think about this, I think about what is the message saying. And so I wrote down literally, this is the question. Are we saying if it's not cold outside, it's okay for you to be homeless?
Well, any policy we want to bring forward, we have to have a plan for helping our elected folks understand how to implement it, right? So that sounds like a lofty ideal, right? But you got to have a plan for making that happen, which is pretty complicated. So I mean, in a way, I kind of think we're eating trying to eat our elephant one bite at a time, right? And potentially starting with a good white flag concept, and trying to move our whole continuum in the direction of doing better by everybody 365 days a year.
Lloyd has a question in the chat, or he wanted to speak.
Lloyd, you want to share?
I put a note in the chat. Angel asked earlier about whether social distancing was going to be required in the open table ministry congregate shelter at Trinity Methodist again this winter, and I replied affirmatively in the chat that I believe yes, it is going to be required because we still have a pandemic and we have very low vaccination rates relative to the general population. Among homeless people in Durham. The data that I think was sent out with the agenda for this meeting suggests that only about 30% of Durham's people experiencing homelessness have been vaccinated thus far. So we've still got a ways to go.
Yeah, and that's the last thing on our agenda. I was looking at the time, and Lord, you brought it up right on time because we're about to run out of meeting space. So we had a very robust conversation. These last few meetings and the conversations have been great. I think, as we plan this too becomes an issue that we need to consider, because the pandemic is not over, but the more people that we need to put into space, the more, and if we don't have a good plan that takes COVID precautions into consideration, the likelihood that we could have a COVID outbreak shelter. I think I was talking to Miss Carolyn and she was saying that she was reading some of the ESG stuff and it was saying that COVID testing or mandating a vaccine or something, like they couldn't do that this year, and she was a little concerned about that. She'll probably be sharing that with Colin on Wednesday, because she had some concerns about it. But we do need to figure out how do we keep people safe when we're doing this and trying to make sure people are not, dying and on the streets from the cold. That they're also not, already sick and needing something else, and that we're running a risk of exposing other people. I got my booster on Friday, and I was talking to our employee health nurse about her thoughts about COVID, and what she told me was that she believes that we are headed in the direction that just like there is an annual flu vaccine, that there will be an annual COVID vaccine as well, and we're headed that way. So I think we have to look at that reality from the standpoint that we have low numbers of people in the population that we serve who are vaccinated, and then as this goes forward, what does that mean if they don't also get the annual vaccination, and what does that look like from a standpoint of keeping people healthy and safe? So the intent was to have some conversation about what we needed to do to try to help change the messaging around vaccinations, so that we could potentially get more people. I think the ESG COVID fund, ESG COVID money has some incentives for for persons who get vaccinated. I think some of the financial stuff is, I think he said maybe up to $50 per person. Do we shape, form our messaging in a way, around educating people, but also letting them know that there's a financial benefit to it? What do we need to do? How do we need to respond? Do we think it's a problem now? Is it okay? Because there are some people that don't believe in any of it and have chosen to not be vaccinated. So they're kind of tied together right now because we're in a pandemic.
So Rita, is there a way or a list of something that has, or is it confidential, if each homeless person that got vaccinated? I mean, is there a way that, okay, so every person that's the homeless the homeless individual that have got vaccinated for the COVID shot, wouldn't that help as they are put in these rooms or whatever, hotel rooms, or for open table ministries or whatever to kind of like ease
I'm trying to understand your question.
I'm trying to explain. Okay, so say, is there a document for each homeless person that has gotten the COVID shot?
No, that's confidential.
That's what I said. That's probably confidential because
But
that would.
apparently, so what Colin said was that HMIS was cross-referenced with the state database, and that's how they got that number that they got. Because every vaccine dose has like a little number. They have that code on your card. If anybody who's gotten vaccinated, so they can kind of figure out who people are based on that identifying number. And so it was cross-referenced, and that's where the data came from. So HMIS was cross-referenced with the state database on vaccinations.
Correct, and that's going to be an ongoing project between HMIS at NCCH and the state's Department of Health and Human Services. I think they're planning to do that kind of cross-referencing on a monthly basis and report it back out to us.
But there's still the chance that all that data is not accurate, because I know that we've had some patients of ours who told us they went to Walmart and there was some group there and they gave them $25 to get a vaccine.
Right.
How they report that data. I don't know where that data goes, so I'm not sure.
Well, I believe all of those providers are responsible for getting that data to the state, but whether they do or not, is a question.
I have to run in less than a minute. Are we close to wrapping up?
I think we are close to being done. Yeah, it's 12. I will share this information with Colin about the opening sooner and about capacity, and look forward to next month us talking about our policy requests and thinking through that a little bit to try to move forward at least some response to white flag, if nothing else. Thanks you guys for a robust meeting. I will entertain. Well, I don't have to motion. We're at 12. We can adjourn our meeting. 1, 2. Yeah, lots of people are gone. I'll entertain a motion though.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, second it. So that was the Angel and Colleen.
Yeah, I think second, yeah.
All right. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All right.
Nay.
That was 1 yes. I will talk to you guys next month, and you may get an update after Wednesday's meeting from Colin, with Colin about white flag, just to let you guys know what's happening. All right.
Thank you, everyone. Great.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Everyone. Have a great one.